quick question for Connie
Okay,
first
let's do
about
that.
the work crush or the work husband.
Work husband.
Yes.
Yeah, how attractive is he after you leave work? You quit that job. Is he
by
still as
proximity.
attractive?
No, you're right.
Proximity.
You're right.
Proximity
He's
crush.
not as attractive after I left work because you know what? Maybe he's still pondering around. If I see him like out, I'm like, oh hey, but no, I think it's not really all there. So like that's why maybe sometimes marriages do like come back after things like that because typically your affair in your head at work wasn't really like that great, you know. Like it wasn't what you wanted. And that's the fine point about what I'm trying to say about the strengths and weaknesses is if you don't know who you are or what you want, how can you expect someone else to? So, like, you know,
The funniest weakness I've ever heard from a girl was she said, "I'm absolutely batshit crazy, but so if you date me, you have to know that going in. I'm just gonna be crazy."
We all want that disclaimer.
But we went through this with Connie on the last time she was on, and again, and I'm curious to see what the ladies think about this, and maybe in your personal experience. Raise your hand, ladies, if you have adopted the mannerisms or the music taste or the personality of men you've dated in the past.
Or your current
husband.
Yeah, for sure.
Dawn, no? You're just
I'm
complete
a country
opposites?
girl, so they usually start listening to country music.
Aww.
But even little things, right? Like sayings, or you enjoy things that maybe he does that maybe you didn't before.
For sure.
Things like that. It could be anything, right? I'm not talking about just me. I'm saying, but so what I mean, and that's not, and when I say this, a lot of women get mad. It's like, well, I say generally women are malleable creatures. And just what that means, and that's not a knock. That's not to say that you don't have your own personality or your own path, but it's, and this is where I go back to my biology for a second. It's all tied into a survival mechanism because women generally can't fight, can't protect themselves if the shit goes down, especially, hundreds of thousands of years ago when we were just fighting with rocks and spears and we didn't have guns. It would behoove you to find the strongest guy you could find and then attach yourself to him, or being a part of the herd or being a part of what's good for the leader is a survival mechanism. We talk about, there's this thing called, this idea called war brides. Basically, you were the wife of some soldier or some chief, then a tribe came over, killed the chief, and you had two options. You could either get killed too, or you're the new chief's wife. And what you would do and because being alive is better than being dead, you would be that new chief's wife. And that's why women generally move on from breakups better than men. That's why they generally don't stay, once they've broken up with a guy, they're completely gone. It's all evolved. It's all about survival. And so going along to getting along is just a feature that a lot of women have. And so I don't generally take a lot of things, like take feminism or political leanings. I don't generally take women super seriously when they say like, I am like this, I'm like this, I'm like this, and I'm like that, because I know, generally speaking, if the right man comes along who's got it going on, you're pretty much going to go with what that guy goes along with. You're pretty much going to adopt his mannerisms. You're going to adopt his political leanings, maybe his music taste, things like that. And it's completely natural. And so that's why I think this whole idea of, well, I need to find myself and I need to become this completed Mona Lisa painting is not generally something that happens, because women are really fickle and they tend to be malleable. And it's like, oh, I was different with this guy, I'm different with that guy. Go ahead, Connie.
It has to happen because a relationship will not heal your past trauma. Absolutely not. Only you can do that. So, you know what I'm saying? If I'm gonna just break up.
Yeah, but are we talking about trauma, or are we talking about personality traits and things like that? Like, because those are two different issues.
You're never gonna judge a book by its cover. You don't know what someone's went through. Maybe they have gone.
I think you can, but go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. But maybe they show up later on in the relationship because you're mimicking more in a more like lovey days at the beginning, and then you start seeing these things afterwards, and the relationship fails. So stop getting into relationships like that. If you're just going to keep getting into relationships and having the same pattern, you're doing something wrong.
Well, I think it's important to,
like you said, put in the effort, put in the time, and you'll become a better version of yourself and for the for complimenting your partner, right?
Yes,
Like,
I
you shouldn't
think
expect someone to fix that.
no. And I think we're in agreement here. I think more so like, yeah, if you've got some stuff in your firmware that's messed up, you should focus on fixing that.
Yeah.
I mean more so like, for example, girl I dated one time was she didn't eat red meat for like 6 years. And then on our like third date, I took her to a steakhouse and then she loved red meat after that. And then we ate steak like once a week. Right. I'm just using that as an example, but it's like something she was
Yeah.
like, I don't eat red meat. I think it's gross, or I'm not into it. I haven't had it in like 6 years. I'm like, yeah, steak's pretty fucking cool. You should have some of this. And she was like, oh
Mhm.
my God, this is the greatest thing ever. So like I'm using that as it's a low stakes thing. But even when it comes to things like politics, where it's like when I talk about judging a book by its cover, I'm like, look, there's things you can avoid, I think, as a man, if you've got the pink hair, the freaking face tattoos, the bull nose ring, whatever the hell that thing's going on, like outward displays that say, stay away from me because my internal actually reflects my external. I think there's a lot of women out there that are like, oh yeah, like I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump. And there's a guy that's like, yeah, I voted for him. I actually think he's awesome. And she's like, oh, interesting. Well, I think this guy's good looking and attractive. And I think there might, because you're not going to go on a date with a guy who you don't think is good looking or that there's a potential for, because it's just not how it works. You're like, oh, okay, tell me more about that. And then it's like by the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I was a little bit wrong, or maybe I was thinking differently. I'm not trying to use that as a specific example, but I think that that's part of the problem that we're in right now. I think that men take what women say too much at face value, and they don't give them a chance to maybe say like, I didn't think about it this way. I didn't think about it that way. When a guy's like, oh man, I went out with her, and say again,
That's called something. That's like a specific thing that actually
like
happens.
code switching,
Yeah,
like
like
being a
when you say
chameleon.
something and then somebody's like beliefs and opinion about that completely shifts from what they say. Like
Well,
that's
it's a survival mechanism. Like I said, it's like
yeah.
women will go along with what, if they think this man is the alpha man of the tribe and I can see myself with him in a relationship, they're much more likely to take on those opinions. And especially for a guy that is has strong convictions. If the guy like is like, ladies, quick poll, choose guy A or choose guy B. Guy A is like, yeah, I voted for Trump. Like, I think he's fine. I don't really care. Like, it's not a big deal. I think he's good for this country. I think he's going to make America great again. You know, he puts more money in my pocket. I think he's a great leader that we need.
All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the courses tab. Newer to the channel, hit subscribe.